Life Over Coffee. Conversations for transformation.
No human has absolutely authority over another human. This perspective, it should be common sense, but it's not for everyone, including some Christians. A dictatorial husband and father can put wives and children in a difficult spot, which does beg the question that folks have asked me for decades. Do you think it's right to correct my authoritarian husband? I want to talk about that for a few moments. I think it will be instructive and directive for those in this type of relationship. I want to share a case study with you, something that someone wrote into me. This is anonymous. I have flattened it out. No name, no geographical location, no church, etc. But it is a very real case study, and I'm going to interact specifically with what is being asked of me. Now, because of that, I will not be answering every question that is around this idea, but I trust this will give some guidance. Here's what the person asked. My husband is the absolute boss of our home. If I suggested anything to him, he would either yell or lecture me on how it was not my place to tell him what to do. Should I correct him or just let it go? The primary text that I would love for you to help me with is how to restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Now, that text many of you are familiar with is Galatians chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. I'll share it with you. It says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. There is an aspect of this question that applies to both spouses. At the heart of the issue is one spouse coming alongside another spouse to provide soul care. In this case study, it's the submitted wife hoping to fulfill the fullest possibilities of a co-equal hierarchy. Going and making disciples does not apply only to those who are outside our homes and need to hear the gospel's message. Disciple making is a call for all Christians to care for each other within their spheres of influence, whether inside or outside our homes. Spouses know their mates better than anyone else. And the longer you are married, the more information and insight you have about your unique spouse, whether you are the man or the woman. Smart marriage partners want to help each other, which is at the heart of disciple making. Everyone benefits. To have a person to know you so well and be able to bring wise, loving, and corrective care into your life is absolute sanctification gold. Some spouses do not have this understanding, or perhaps they do, but for inhibiting reasons, they do not bring soul care to each other. My hope for the person in this case study, and anyone else for that matter, is that it does not matter if you are a husband or a wife, but that you can apply these ideas to your marriage. Now, this wife is asking, as far as correcting an authoritarian husband, which is what the case study is about, you want to begin with Galatians 6:1, as she suggested. That is an excellent passage of Scripture. But there is a significant caveat here. If he is an absolute boss husband, then he will not listen to your advice or appreciate your care. Here's the big idea. Only a correctable spouse can be corrected, whether it's a husband or wife. The correctable person is a humble, teachable person who wants to change. And he or she, but in this case, he is appreciative that you speak into his life. The authoritarian husband is a dictator, according to what I'm reading in this case study and what I've shared with you. And those people types do not surround themselves with folks who disagree with them. The wife in a marriage like this is between a rock and a hard place. All of his other friends or relationships will either acquiesce to his domineering personality style, or they will leave the relationship. Authoritarian types surround themselves with people who are not able to challenge the tight-fisted control that they wield. In an ideal world, you should correct your husband when it's needed. she should correct her husband as she is intuiting, and of course, as the text would suggest in Galatians. Regrettably, this type of spouse does not live in that ideal world, biblical world, a Christian world. And so she must be careful about bringing things to his attention. He has a distorted view of submission in the marriage, which makes him the absolute boss. And she is in the role of the subjugated. Rather than seeing himself as a leader who disciples his family, he treats his wife as an unequal entity in the sight of God. Paul's idea of nourishing and cherishing a wife in Ephesians 5:29 is an unknown tongue to this kind of man. He does not have a proper biblical category for strengths and weaknesses or how his spouse could be his most significant asset in their marriage outside of God's friendship and empowering favor. I have dealt with these insecure, unaware, arrogant, domineering authority types many times. It takes an enormous amount of patience and wisdom and courage and kindness and community to turn them into men who love God and others as much as they love themselves. Now, I am not saying it can't happen. I'm not. I'm just being a realist here in this situation. But she must know where the starting line is. We must understand our starting points, or we can assume too much. And the starting point, which is not his humble cooperativeness, or she may make what could have been avoidable mistakes if she goes in without this type of understanding. Now, granted, I'm not dealing with how to leave or if she should leave her authoritarian husband. That's not the question that's being asked. That's another type of conversation that requires other questions, more counselors. My aim here is to give you insight into a dictator's heart. I want to help her to understand her man, her absolute boss man, which will aid her in restoring him in the spirit of gentleness, which is the question that's being asked. And so I want to walk through several characteristics of this kind of man, because one of the things that I am concerned about is sometimes with authoritarians, absolute men who have to have control, or absolute men and women who have to have control, is that we can misunderstand them at the heart level. For example, one of the things that's typical with these type of individuals is that they are insecure. And that's why I want to talk. That's why I want to talk through this. And if she is wanting to restore him in a spirit of gentleness, then understanding what you are restoring and what needs restoration is important. The number one problem with a self-reliant person is their vulnerability. A driving motivation for their self-sufficiency, their control, their authoritarianism is that they are masking their fears and insecurities through an outward faux power. The dictator is a controller, and a controlling person cannot be out of control. Hence, you begin to see a little bit of their fear. They accomplish this illusion of self-reliance and authoritarianism by maximizing their strengths while quashing anything or anyone that penetrates their vulnerability force field. They're weaker than you might imagine. And so one of the things that's nested in their heart is insecurity, usually. Two is unawareness or ignorance. Because the self-sufficient controller is managing all aspects of his life, there are things that he cannot perceive, things he cannot see. He's too stubborn, too blind to admit that he might be wrong. He's too proud to ask for help. His modus operandi is to maintain an image of authority and power. It's an illusion, which means humble admissions of his inadequacy or ignorance are impossible. He's not going to let you into his blind spots. He will keep his unawareness unaware, and he will live in that self-deception himself. He presents his carefully edited image to others, which is a manicured, likable reputation that makes his rogue authoritarianism look like what it perceives to be on the outside. However, behind the curtain, he's a weak and insecure, weak human being. So he is weak, he is unaware because of his blind spots. Number three, he's arrogant. His image making perpetuates the myth of self-importance, which is an elixir that intoxicates him into feeling good about himself. Egotistical self-importance stems from insecurity and fear. He creates a world that he can control, which makes him feel good about himself. He leverages his strengths to attain self-important status, and he permits nobody to bring him down or expose his insecurities, including his wife. Thus, there is tight-fisted control. We're talking about an arrogant individual. Not just being unaware, as I mentioned earlier, but he is blind. If you perpetuate a lie long enough, it will no longer be a lie to you. This person is blind to his blindness, which is the worst possible state of the wayward soul. I trust as you hear these things that the Lord will give you pity for a man like this, specifically this wife. We don't want to be angry at them, responding fire with fire. We do need courage. We do not acquiesce, but we can pity them and lament to God because of his tortured condition, much of which he does not perceive due to unawareness. In this case, I'm speaking of blindness. For reasons that predate this wife, there has been a strong desire for him to construct a kingdom where he has always wanted to reign. The blindness of his passion has fully captured his soul. And then we have domineering as the last aspect of this cluster of dysfunction that is operative in his heart. The behavior that the wife feels and disdain in her husband is his dominance. It's worse as you think about how he is affecting the children. It's at this juncture where a wife senses her most significant tension. On the one hand, she loves, or maybe she used to love, this man, her husband. On the other hand, she is protective, a protective mother who wants to rescue her children. You can feel the tension inside of her soul. And so understanding his worship structure and the clustering of his dysfunction, we have domineering, we have blindness, we have arrogance, we have unawareness, we have deep insecurity, and there are more things in this self-reliant spirit. The text the case study referred to is Galatians 6:1. And it's because of that text that I'm answering the question the way that I have. The case study does not offer a bailout for the wife, but how God can use the wife to restore her husband in a spirit of gentleness, which is a fantastic question, a humble one, a courageous one. There may be another discussion at another time about staying or leaving, but that issue is not in view. Paul says that the correction of the husband must be in a spirit of gentleness. I would say to the wife that if she's not doing this, then there is something that she can change today about herself as she considers approaching him with that kindness spirit. Some people take a spirit of gentleness too far. For example, the empathetic restorer will feel sorry for her husband and even blame herself for why he does what he does. That's wrong. The sympathetic restorer will do hard things, but not go to the other extreme of using sinful anger, harsh words, or combative spirit. And so in the two ditches of empathy and sympathy, we have the empathetic restorer who may even blame themselves. We have the sympathetic restorer who may be harsh and unkind and combative. Most husbands like this don't change unless God breaks them down, which, by the way, she should ask that God would do this. One of the hard things that I'm implying is that asking the Lord to bring him to a place of brokenness. Dismantling is an essential kindness that this husband could receive from the Lord. And so asking the Father to do this for this wife and do it for him would be an act of mercy and an act of courage. There are many more things that this lady must know to help her husband. But for now, I would ask her, and this is what I shared with her, to focus on just two things. Number one, find your starting point by discerning some of the idolatries in his heart that are motivating him to be as he is. For example, here's another cluster of idols: reputation, power, fame, approval, significance. These can be some of the idols that he worships, and it will probably not be a singular idol, but maybe 2, 3, or more. And it's because of these idols that he is motivated to maintain this strict control and power of dominance. And so, one, find your starting point. Discern some of the idols. If you're going to restore him, it has to be an inside-out operation beginning in the heart. And his heart is an idol factory, and his worship structure does not have a Godward orientation. Number two, guard your heart as you seek those civil moments where you can speak to him, hoping to help him change. One of the most vital things you can do is to see him as a prisoner to the chains of his making, which is part of why I've been identifying him that way, with the cluster of dysfunction and then a cluster of idols in his heart. You may have to take a different kind of decisive action later, but before you make that decision, make that decision that will be hard to walk back, make sure you're talking to a competent mentor who understands you, your husband, and dares to walk with you through this marriage crisis. But before you get there, consider this courageous, sympathetic, corrective confrontation to restore him in a spirit of gentleness. You should not feel any guilt for seeking help outside your marriage. If your husband is an authoritarian, as the case study suggests, then he has disqualified himself functionally from discipling you. He has moved outside of the hierarchy. And so now God is your functional authoritative head because of his disqualification, and you must submit yourself to your church authority as they follow the Lord, as they guide you through the next steps. Now, if you're a wife in this situation, be a careful wife who wants to explore all the options, which begins with your primary objective as your husband's redemption, if needed, and then his restoration, if he is a believer. Do as this lady is suggesting, restoring him in a spirit of gentleness. There may be other steps, harder steps that you'll have to take in the future. I say harder as though this is not hard enough, but there can be more complex steps in the future. You're imitating the gospel in this matter. Christ came to the imprisoned to set them free. Your husband may be set free as you lead him to Jesus. Now, here are a few thoughts as you explore how to do that, and then I will wrap up. I want to give you 6 thoughts. Number one, describe your prayer life, specifically as it relates to your husband. In what ways do you express gratitude for him? What are a few ways in which he is leading well? This is a heart monitoring, heart calibrating question that I'm asking you, because if we're not praying right in private about them, then whatever corrective care that we do in the public space probably won't go right. Again, if our hearts are not right with the Lord, thus describe your prayer life. Number two, have you crossed the line and are now more of a grumbler, complainer, gossiper about your husband? If you are, go to question number one, describe your prayer life. If you have transgressed that line, what is your plan for change? Who are you going to enlist to help you change? Again, I want to make sure that your heart is calibrated correctly as you step into this wonderful desire that you have to restore him in a spirit of gentleness. If your heart is not right, it will be hard to restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Number three, talk about what gentle correction looks like in the verse in this case study, Galatians 6, 1 and 2. Would your children characterize you as a person who corrects their daddy with the spirit of gentleness? Maybe if they're old enough to answer that question, it would be a great question to ask them. Now, if you're not, then why not? And what is your plan to change? Number four, are you asking God to break him, to dismantle him? An appropriate lamenting prayer. Having mercy, God, in thy wrath, have mercy. But it may be appropriate to ask God to bring him to the end of himself, which is what I mean by dismantling or breaking him. Number five, the sympathetic person wants the captured soul to experience freedom. Sometimes that liberty comes by dramatically breaking the bonds that have bound and incarcerated the individual. It does not have to happen this way, but it may be what he needs to happen to free him. How have your fears hindered you from bringing comprehensive, including courageous, care to him? And then finally, number six, how have his authoritarian and persuasive ways trained you to over-guilt yourself to where you believe that his sinfulness is your sin. It happens. The culture calls it gaslighting. This condition can cloud your thinking, which is why you want a sympathetic friend to walk with you through this. This is an excellent question and a case study to work through. If you want to read all about it, you can go to lifeovercoffee.com. Read the full transcript. It's titled, Do You Think It's Right to Correct My Authoritarian Husband? Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Learn more and get access to other resources at lifeovercoffee.com.